I'm Sarah Carter, 26 years old, and I never imagined I'd cut ties with my family. But that night, I did. At our dinner table in Hartford, Mom slid a velvet box across to my sister, Avery. Inside were the keys to a brand new Tesla, $120,000 worth of sleek metal gleaming as brightly as her smug grin. For graduating, Mom beamed, as if my 22-year-old sister had just won a Nobel Prize. I sat frozen, my fork suspended midair, a knot tightening in my stomach. I had worked endless hours as an office assistant, paid the family's bills, and even balanced Dad's books when his business went under. And my sister? She'd coasted through college on a free ride, and now she had this car. Then Mom turned to me, her smile gone. "Sarah, next month, you owe $200 for rent." Dad sipped his wine in silence. Avery twirled the Tesla keys. My heart pounded with betrayal. This wasn't just unfair. It was a cold, deliberate choice at my expense. I didn't argue. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor, and walked to my room. My hands shook as I packed a bag. Laptop, clothes, phone. I grabbed the keys to my old Honda and drove to my best friend Alyssa's place. No note. No goodbye. The Tesla mocked me from the driveway as I pulled away. The next morning, I sat on Alyssa's couch, my laptop open, coffee cooling beside me. The bitterness of last night clung to me. I remembered the bank statements I'd seen months earlier while helping Dad with his real estate business. For years, I'd been his unofficial bookkeeper, balancing accounts when his deals collapsed, paying utility bills, covering Avery's textbooks, even chipping in for Mom's car repairs. That $1,200 rent demand had felt like a knife twisting deeper. I logged into the old joint account I once used for Dad's business. My access was still active, probably because he never imagined I'd look. My pulse quickened as I scrolled through the transactions. And there it was. A $50,000 withdrawal dated 3 years ago, right when Avery started at Yale. Another $20,000 the following year. Then smaller amounts, all adding up to nearly $200,000. The timeline matched perfectly. Avery's tuition, her new laptop, her summer trips. My stomach churned. This wasn't just favoritism. It was theft. I grabbed my phone and searched for James Paul Bennett, Grandpa William's old financial advisor. I'd met him once years ago, tagging along to Grandpa's office. He was retired now, but his number was still listed. My hands trembled as I dialed. "James Bennett," a calm voice answered. "Hi, this is Sarah Carter, William Carter's granddaughter," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to ask about something Grandpa set up for me." A pause. Then, "Sarah, I've been expecting your call," James said. "Your grandfather left a trust fund for you. $200,000 meant for your education and future. Your father, Brian, was the trustee." My breath caught. A trust fund. For me. I pressed him for details, my mind racing. James explained how Grandpa had arranged it when I was 10, before he passed. Brian had full control as trustee, but the withdrawals I'd uncovered weren't authorized for Avery's expenses. James even had a letter from Grandpa outlining his wishes. "I can send it to you," he offered. "Please," I said, my voice tight. "Email it now." Minutes later, my inbox pinged. I opened the scanned letter, Grandpa's neat handwriting filling the screen. To my dearest Sarah, it began. "This trust is for your dreams. College, a home, a life you build on your own terms. Don't let anyone take it from you." My eyes burned. Grandpa had known. Dad's favoritism, Mom's silence, Avery's endless rewards. He had tried to protect me. I leaned back, staring at Alyssa's ceiling. For years, I'd worked overtime, skipped vacations, poured money into the family, and Dad had siphoned off my future to bankroll Avery's. I thought of Mom's voice at dinner, so casual about that rent demand. Did she know? Did Avery? My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. I swiped it away. They didn't get to explain this away. Alyssa walked in with 2 mugs of coffee. Are you okay? She asked, settling beside me. No, I admitted, showing her the letter. Dad took money that was mine. $200,000. Her eyes widened. What are you going to do? I clenched my jaw. Find out how much he took, and make him pay it back. Alyssa squeezed my shoulder. You've got this. Whatever you need, I'm here. The rest of the day, I dug deeper. Bank records, dates, every transaction. Each withdrawal was another blow. Avery's dorm fees, her car insurance, even a spring break trip to Cancun. My money, Grandpa's gift to me. I wasn't just angry. I was done being the family's doormat. James promised more documents, statements, proof of Dad's mismanagement. I thanked him, my voice firm. This wasn't over. I shut my laptop, resolve hardening. Dad thought I'd stay quiet, keep playing the dutiful daughter. He was wrong. That afternoon, I called James again. My hands were steady now, even if my heart wasn't. Tell me everything about the trust, I said. James didn't hesitate. Your grandfather set up a $200,000 trust for you in 2008 when you were 10. He said it was for your education, maybe a house one day. Brian, as trustee, had access but no right to redirect the funds. He sent me a folder of documents, trust agreements, statements, all stamped with Grandpa Williams' signature. The withdrawals were laid out in black and white: $50,000 for Avery's Yale tuition in 2022, $20,000 for her study abroad in Paris, $10,000 for her car payments. Smaller amounts covered phone upgrades, a ski trip last winter. Nearly the entire trust was gone. I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Brian hadn't just favored Avery. He had erased my future to build hers. I'd spent years working late shifts, paying family bills, thinking I was holding us together. I'd covered groceries when Dad's deals collapsed, sorted his paperwork, even bought Avery's textbooks. And this was my reward. Nothing. I paced Alyssa's living room, fury surging through me. He used my money, I said, slamming the documents onto her coffee table. Every cent Grandpa left for me went to Avery. Alyssa scanned the pages, her face paling. This is disgusting. Your dad planned this. I nodded, jaw locked. And Mom never said a word. She let it happen. Alyssa pulled me into a hug, her voice fierce. You don't deserve this, Sarah. You've got to fight back. Her words lit something inside me. I'd always been the family's fixer, the quiet one who worked hard, asked for nothing, and carried the weight. But Brian had crossed a line. Grandpa's trust was supposed to be my chance at a degree, a home, a life I earned. I wasn't letting him take that from me. I thought of Avery behind the wheel of her Tesla, probably clueless about where the money came from. Did she know? Did she care? Mom's texts kept buzzing. 3 more since yesterday. I ignored them. I didn't want excuses. I wanted justice. Brian thought I'd roll over, like always. He was wrong. I opened my laptop and searched for a lawyer in Hartford. One name stood out: Stephen Thomas Walsh, a trust and estate specialist with a reputation for dismantling corrupt fiduciaries. His website showed a sharp-eyed man in his late 30s, promising to hold trustees accountable. Reviews called him relentless. That was exactly what I needed. I dialed his office, my pulse steady now. Walsh Law Office, a woman answered. This is Sarah Carter, I said. I need to speak with Stephen Walsh about a trust fund my father misused. She booked me for a consultation the next morning. I hung up, resolve hardening. Brian had taken what was mine, but I was taking it back. Grandpa's trust wasn't just money, It was his faith in me. I wasn't letting that go. The following morning, I drove into downtown Hartford. The building was sleek, all glass and steel, but I barely noticed. My focus was the folder in my bag, James's documents, the proof of Brian's betrayal. Stephen greeted me with a firm handshake. "Sarah Carter, right? Tell me what's going on." I laid it all out. Grandpa's trust, the $200,000, the withdrawals for Avery's tuition, trips, and car. I slid the bank statements and trust agreement across the desk. "My father used my money," I said coldly. "I want it back." Stephen flipped through the documents, his gaze sharp. "This is a clear violation," he said. "As trustee, Brian had a legal duty to act in your interest. Redirecting funds to your sister is a breach of fiduciary duty. We can sue for restitution and possibly damages." I leaned forward, steady. "What do we need to do?" He outlined the plan: file a lawsuit, demand a full accounting of the trust, and seek a court order to recover the funds. "We'll need every document you can provide: bank records, trust agreements, anything tying Brian to these withdrawals." I handed over everything James had sent. Stephen promised to draft the complaint and file it within days. "This won't be quick," Stephen warned, "but you have a strong case." Back at Alyssa's, I threw myself into my online graphic design course. I was working on a logo project for a mock client, adjusting fonts and colors late into the night. It kept me grounded, a reminder that I was building something for myself. My laptop pinged with an email from my professor praising my latest submission. "You've got talent, Sarah," she wrote. For the first time in days, I smiled. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 5 calls from Mom, 2 from Brian, even 1 from Avery. I sent them all to voicemail. Mom's messages were vague pleas to come home and talk. Brian's were sharper, demanding to know why I was causing trouble. Avery's was just her name, as if that alone could drag me back. I deleted them all. They didn't get to guilt me now. Alyssa noticed my phone lighting up. "They're not giving up," she said, pouring tea into my cup. "They can try all they want," I replied flatly. "I'm done with their excuses." She grinned. "That's my girl. Keep your eyes on the prize." The next week, I gathered more evidence. James sent additional records, emails from Brian requesting trust withdrawals under the guise of family expenses. Every single one was a lie, tied directly to Avery's tuition, trips, and luxuries. I forwarded them to Stephen, who later called to confirm he'd filed the lawsuit. "We're demanding full restitution," he said, $200,000 plus interest and legal fees." I kept working on my design course, submitting a website mock-up for a local bakery. My professor's feedback was glowing, urging me to polish my portfolio. I wasn't just fighting for Grandpa's money, I was fighting for the life he wanted me to have. At night, I sketched plans for my future: a freelance business, my own apartment, freedom. Brian had already stolen years from me. He wasn't stealing my dreams. My phone buzzed again, another call from Mom. I silenced it, keeping my eyes on Stephen's email outlining the next steps: discovery, depositions, and a court date in just a few weeks. Brian would have to answer for what he'd done, and I wasn't backing down. 3 weeks later, I sat in a Hartford courtroom, hands clasped tightly in my lap. The room was stark. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, but all my attention was on Stephen at the plaintiff's table. He adjusted his tie, calm and steady, ready to present my case. Across the aisle, Brian sat beside his lawyer, his face a mask of defiance. Mom was next to him, eyes darting toward me. Avery was nowhere to be seen, probably too busy cruising around in her Tesla. The judge entered, robes sweeping as the bailiff called the court to order. My pulse thundered in my ears, but I kept my gaze steady. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my voice, finally being heard. Stephen rose. Your Honor, this is a case of blatant fiduciary misconduct. The defendant, Brian Carter, misappropriated a $200,000 trust left exclusively for my client, Sarah Carter, by her grandfather, William Carter. Instead of protecting those funds, as required by law, Brian funneled them into expenses for his younger daughter, Avery, college tuition, travel, even a luxury car. Across the aisle, Brian's lawyer objected, insisting the money had been used for family needs. But Stephen countered with crisp precision, sliding copies of bank statements and emails across the table. These are not family needs, he said coldly. They are Avery's bills, paid with Sarah's future. I watched Brian shift uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. Mom sat rigid beside him, her eyes flicking between us like she wanted to vanish. The judge leafed through the documents, expression unreadable. "We'll hear testimony," she said. Stephen nodded and gestured toward me. "Ms. Carter, please take the stand." My legs felt like lead as I walked forward, but once I was sworn in, something inside me steadied. I told the court everything: how Grandpa had left the trust for me, how I'd worked nights and weekends while Brian siphoned funds for Avery, how I discovered the truth in the bank records James Bennett provided. Brian's lawyer tried to rattle me on cross-examination. "Sarah, isn't it true you also benefited from family expenses? Groceries, housing, utilities, things your father paid for?" I looked him square in the eye. Groceries I bought, bills I paid. My father didn't cover me. He drained what was meant for me. He stole my future to buy my sister's. The words hung in the courtroom, sharp as glass. Stephen leaned forward, his voice low but firm. No further questions. When I stepped down, Alyssa caught my eye from the back row. She gave me a small nod, her silent reminder. "You've got this." Mom stood, her voice trembling. "Sarah, please, let's talk. We didn't mean to hurt you." Her eyes glistened, but I kept mine fixed on the judge. I wasn't there for tears or excuses. I was there for justice. The judge inhaled slowly before delivering the ruling. "Based on the evidence, I find Brian Carter liable for breach of fiduciary duty." Her voice rang with authority. "The court orders restitution of $200,000 to Sarah Carter, plus an additional $25,000 in punitive damages for willful misconduct." She paused, her gaze narrowing on my father. "Mr. Carter, your actions were a clear violation of trust law. You will also cover all legal fees." Brian's face drained of color. Mom gasped, clutching his arm. I sat perfectly still, my heart hammering but steady. When the gavel struck, it felt like the weight of years slid off my shoulders. Grandpa's trust was mine again, not just the money, but his faith in me. Stephen turned, a small smile breaking his usually composed expression. "We did it, Sarah. You won." I nodded, my voice low but certain. "Thank you for everything." As we stepped out of the courtroom, Mom rushed toward me, her hands reaching. "Sarah, can we just talk? We're still family." I stepped back, my tone unyielding. "You made your choice, Nancy. You all did." I walked past her, head high. Brian called my name, but I didn't turn. Avery hadn't even bothered to show up. They weren't my family anymore. Outside, Alyssa leaned against her car, her grin wide as she spotted me. "You nailed it, didn't you?" "They're paying back every cent," I said as I slid into the passenger seat. "Plus more." She high-fived me. "That's my girl. Now what?" I looked out the window at the sharp lines of the Hartford skyline. Now I build my life on my terms. The victory wasn't just financial. It was proof I could stand for myself and for Grandpa's legacy. Brian's lies, Mom's silence, Avery's privilege, none of it could touch me anymore. I was free. A month later, I signed the lease on my new apartment in Hartford's West End. It was small, a one-bedroom with a narrow balcony, but it was mine. The $200,000 restitution, plus the $25,000 penalty, covered the down payment and left enough to start fresh. I stood in the empty living room, keys clutched tight, a quiet pride swelling inside me. This was what Grandpa William had wanted, a place to call my own. I spent the first week settling in, painting the walls a soft gray and unpacking boxes Alyssa had helped me haul from her place. She insisted on carrying the heavy ones, joking that her gym membership was finally paying off. "This place is perfect for you," she said, setting down a lamp. "It's got your vibe, simple but strong." I smiled, gratitude swelling in my chest. "Couldn't have done this without you." She waved me off. "You're doing it all yourself, Sarah. I'm just the cheerleader." With the apartment finally in order, I threw myself into freelance graphic design. My online course had ended, and my portfolio, stuffed with logos, website mock-ups, and branding projects, was strong enough to pitch real clients. I set up a profile on a freelance platform, and within days I got a message from Kristen Lee Morgan, a local bakery owner in need of a rebrand. Her email was warm but direct. "I love your style. Can you design a logo and menu for my shop?" I met Kristen at her bakery, a cozy spot called Sweet Haven, where the air smelled of butter and sugar. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed but quick to laugh. "I want something modern but warm," she said, handing me a coffee. "Think you can handle it?" "Absolutely," I replied, sketching ideas on a napkin. We clicked instantly, tossing around concepts over croissants. By the end of the meeting, she'd hired me for the full project. Logo, menus, even a website. My first real client. It felt like a door had swung wide open. Back home, I worked late into the night, refining Kristen's logo. My laptop glowed in the quiet apartment, sketches spread across the table. Every line I drew, every color I chose felt like a step toward the future Grandpa had imagined for me. I wasn't just designing for Kristen, I was building a career, something no one could ever take away again. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my focus. The screen lit up with 35 missed calls, 20 from Nancy, 10 from Brian, 5 from Avery. They'd been calling for weeks, leaving voicemails I never opened. Mom's were long and pleading. Brian's were curt, commanding me to stop this nonsense. Avery's were short. Just her name. Like that alone should make me call back. I didn't. They had made their choices years ago, pouring everything into Avery while bleeding me dry. I wasn't their fixer anymore. Alyssa came over the next evening with takeout from a Thai place down the street. We sat on my balcony, city lights flickering below. "Your family's still blowing up your phone, huh?" she asked, eyeing the screen lighting up beside me. "Yeah," I said, stirring my noodles. 35 calls now. I'm not answering." She nodded, her expression firm. "Good. You don't owe them anything." I leaned back, the night air cool against my face. It's strange. Part of me wonders what they want to say. But then I remembered. They'd had years to say it, and they never did. Alyssa raised her glass. "To new beginnings. And to you, kicking butt." I laughed, clinking mine against hers. "To that." The following week, Kristen emailed, thrilled with the logo draft. "This is exactly what I wanted," she wrote. "Can you come by to discuss the website?" I met her again at Sweet Haven, where she introduced me to her staff and showed me plans for a new summer menu. Our meetings soon turned into regular coffee chats, her stories about running the bakery mixing with my ideas for her brand. She wasn't just a client anymore, she was becoming a friend. Work picked up quickly. A local coffee shop hired me for a poster design. Then a nonprofit reached out for a full branding package. I carved out an office corner in my apartment, with a desk and a mood board pinned with sketches, swatches, and inspirations. Each project felt like a brick laid in the foundation of the life I was finally building for myself. The calls from my family didn't stop, but they became background noise. I blocked Mom after her 21st voicemail. Brian's messages turned sharp, filled with lectures about family loyalty. Avery stopped calling after her 5th attempt, as if she'd finally given up. I didn't care. My world was here now. My apartment, my work, Alyssa's laughter, Kristen's encouragement. I was done looking back. 2 months later, my apartment buzzed with laughter. It was my 27th birthday, and Alyssa had transformed my living room into a party zone. String lights draped across the balcony doors, indie rock thrummed through a borrowed speaker, and a cake from Kristen's bakery sat on the table, my name written in elegant script across the icing. Alyssa had invited a handful of friends, some from her art circle, others I'd met through freelancing. The space filled with chatter, clinking glasses, and stories that left my cheeks aching from smiling. Kristen arrived with a tray of cupcakes, her grin wide. "These are on the house," she said, setting them down on the counter. "You're officially my favorite client." I laughed, handing her a soda. "Only because I pay on time." "That, and you make my bakery look good," she teased with a wink. The night felt light, as if the weight of the past year had finally lifted. Alyssa raised her glass, the string lights glinting off the rim. "To Sarah," she said, her voice ringing clear. "For building a life that's all hers." The room erupted in cheers and warmth spread through me, deeper than any toast, any cake, any gift. For the first time in years, I felt surrounded not by people who demanded or expected, but by friends who chose me. This was family. My family. We danced, ate too much cake, and swapped stories until midnight. Kristen told us about her first disastrous attempt at baking bread, and Alyssa confessed she'd once dyed her hair green by accident in college. I shared how I'd spent an entire night redesigning a logo, only to learn the client wanted a different color palette. When the last guest left, the apartment fell quiet again. Alyssa stayed to help me clean, stacking plates in the sink. "You looked happy tonight," she said, scrubbing a fork. "Really happy." "I am," I admitted, for the first time in a long time. She hugged me, her voice soft. "You deserve it." Later, alone, I pulled Grandpa William's letter from a drawer. I hadn't read it since James first sent it, but tonight felt right. I unfolded the worn paper, his steady handwriting a reminder of his love. He had written about believing in my strength, urging me to carve my own path. "You're enough," he'd said. The words struck me differently now. They weren't just about the trust. They were about me, standing on my own, building my life. I tucked the letter back carefully, my heart steady. Grandpa had seen who I could become long before I ever did. The next morning, Kristen texted, asking me to stop by Sweet Haven to review her new menu designs. I walked through Hartford's streets, the spring air warm and sharp. The bakery buzzed with customers, the scent of butter and coffee thick in the air. She waved me over to a corner table spreading out printed mock-ups. "These are perfect," she said, pointing to the clean lines and soft colors. "You're making my business shine." I smiled, pride swelling. Just doing what I love. My freelance work was thriving. I'd landed 2 more clients, a yoga studio and a local bookstore, both thrilled with my portfolio. My apartment's office corner had grown into a real workspace, complete with a second monitor and a shelf lined with design books. Every project felt like another brick in the foundation of the life Grandpa had wanted for me. A life I was finally building brick by brick. Through a mutual acquaintance at the bookstore, I heard whispers about Brian. His real estate business was crumbling. Clients had pulled out after word of the lawsuit spread through Hartford's close-knit business community. No one trusted a man who'd stolen his daughter's inheritance. He'd lost deals, his office, even his reputation. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but it vanished. He had chosen Avery over me for years. This was the consequence. I also learned Avery had moved to Boston, working at a marketing firm and living in a cramped studio, no Tesla in sight. She was starting over, just like me, but her path was hers, and mine was mine. My phone had stopped buzzing weeks ago. Those 35 missed calls were the last of it. Mom's pleas, Brian's demands, Avery's hollow attempts. I'd blocked every number. They were just ghosts now, buried in my contacts. A final email from Mom had arrived last week, asking for one last chance to explain. I deleted it unread. They'd had years to choose me, to see me. They didn't get to rewrite the story now. Alyssa dropped by that evening, carrying a sketchbook for a new project. We were brainstorming a mural for a community center. On my balcony, under the fading light, we spread out our pencils and paper, ideas spilling between us. "You ever think about them?" she asked, her pencil hovering midline. "Sometimes," I admitted, shading a corner of the design. "But not like I used to. They're not my story anymore." She nodded, her smile soft but certain. "You're writing a better one." I looked out at the city, its lights steady and bright against the dusk. This was my life now. My apartment, my work, my friends, my choices. Grandpa's letter had been right all along. You're enough. Cutting off Brian, Mom, and Avery hadn't just closed a door. It had opened an entire world where I defined my own worth. I had chosen myself, and for the first time, I knew it was the right choice. The skyline shimmered like a promise, and I felt it deep in my bones. This was only the beginning.